Infrastructure code's one of the most important things in my world. If you write the code and you deploy the code often, you can build anything. It's not impossible to be just a developer. It's just learning the world, and who knows, in a couple of months, you could probably be building the next Netflix.
I wanted to transition into our second part of this conversation, focusing more on infrastructure code. And that is something that's incredibly powerful, but a lot of people don't necessarily know its full potential. What is infrastructure code, and what are some of the powerful things that it can do?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of my favorite stories to tell about infrastructure code is that really probably goes back 8 or 9 years when I first started learning about CloudFormation on Amazon Web Services. A good friend of mine who's also a big computer nerd like me, I was talking to him one day. I showed him a CloudFormation template that I had written. I was able to explain to him that this template created the server and installed the code for the server and got the server running all in this template, whereas he knew that he had to run all of these commands and SSH to this thing and install this command there and then do that same command over here to get it up and working. Just seeing the way in which his eyes light up once I was able to explain to him what it was doing, and just seeing that that file does that. That's what this does. It was my favorite story. I remember thinking back to this, being able to explain for the first time to a good friend of mine what infrastructure code does deep at its core is just truly fascinating. Now, writing a CloudFormation template, give me 5 minutes. We'll do the same thing. No big deal. Let's get that thing running. But just the first time ever experiencing that was, truthfully, it sounds super nerdy to say, but I really like the whole infrastructure code side of the world. So I get super excited thinking back all the way to talking to my buddy about getting CloudFormation written that created this thing. It's stupid, but hilarious. I love it.
Something a lot of people need to know about. So that's awesome. So what are some different things that are considered infrastructure code? What all does that encompass?
Ooh, that's a good question. Obviously, CloudFormation is Amazon's. Each cloud provider has their own kind of language that they use. Azure's is called, it's like Azure Resource Manager, maybe. Google has their own. I don't remember it off the top of my head. Terraform's one that allows you to do a multi-cloud approach with infrastructure code. Problem there is, while it is multi-cloud, you still have to write code specifically for AWS, specifically for Azure, specifically for GCP or whatever. So it doesn't just inherently make it so you can write a simple statement that just spans all the different clouds. There are providers, there are infrastructure code tools out there that do that. There's also even the more traditional ones like Ansible, you can consider infrastructure code because you can create and configure AWS resources with Ansible, Puppet, Chef. All of the configuration code capabilities have some of those now cloud provisioning capabilities. You can even put together very simple Python using some SDKs like the Boto 3 SDK. You can do it in any sort of language to create infrastructure via actual Python code. So there's a million different ways to do it. And I don't know that I would say any particular way is right or wrong. It's just however you end up knowing it best.
Awesome. I would be super curious in hearing any of your recommendations when it comes to best practices when writing this code.
The first one that pops into my head is iterate over it. Start small. One of the things that's kind of hard with infrastructure code, if you specifically think like CloudFormation or Terraform, when you create on AWS, if you create an RDS database, it's a managed service from Amazon that provides a database for you, right? If you create an RDS instance, it may take 15 minutes to create that. So you run that template and you go get a coffee or go heat up lunch. And hopefully by the time you get back, it's finished creating. More likely you've misconfigured it, and about 2 or 3 minutes into it, it's realized that there's a misconfiguration or something's wrong there, and it has rolled back your job there. The quickest way to fix that is to start with something fairly small and then iterate over it till you get your final deployment. What I see a lot of people will do is they'll take a template or some sort of thing that kind of gives them an all-in-one template of network configured VPC and then the RDS database. If you run all of those at the same time and try to create a bunch of resources all at the same time, it's very possible that it will do that rollback, and you're talking 30 minutes before it's complete. So if you iterate over it, create the VPC, get the VPC working, and then add the RDS instance or add the security group and add this, add that. Each time you add something, you iterate over it and deploy that change, you're less likely to have that big deployment that then gets rolled back and takes up 45 minutes of your life. So that's the biggest one for me, is iterate over individual changes. It may seem like more work up front, but that one time that you say, oh, this is all going to work, and you push it out there, 45 minutes later, it just finished undeploying. It's kind of a big pain in the butt there, and you've wasted a long time.
That's really helpful. And I think one of the last things that we wanted to hit on today was multi-cloud and how that is related to this entire topic. Do you mind sharing a little bit about what that is and how that is tied into this idea of infrastructure code?
I would make the joke, I'm a huge Amazon fan person, of saying there is no such thing as multi-cloud and only Amazon exists. But truthfully, as much as I love Amazon Web Services, Azure has really started to develop a lot of different tools that a lot of people are using. I haven't stayed fully versed on all the things that Google has provided. But like I said earlier, there's the whole Nutanix and VMware worlds that are traditionally on-prem solutions, but have a lot of cloud mindsets going into them now. OpenStack world is still out there, and it's open source tooling that has provided a lot of the same APIs that a cloud person would expect to have. In all these different worlds, you get a lot of those managed services is really what I think saves a lot of people in the cloud world now. Of you don't necessarily need to be a database expert to run a database now. You can kind of set up a lot of this stuff automatically and let it monitor itself and tell you, hey, you probably need to change this setting here because you're getting sub performance or whatnot. So ultimately, there's a lot of good reasons to be not well versed in every single cloud. Probably want to be an expert in one particular thing. I do consider myself an expert in Amazon. I am a Amazon Web Services person. That's my go-to. But if the company needs to talk about Azure, I can talk about Azure. I can look up some stuff and find out some of the similarities between the different clouds. It's all, like I said earlier, somebody else's server. So that's really all it's come down to.
Fantastic. That's everything I wanted to cover with you. Any other last thoughts or things you'd want to share?
Automate everything. Infrastructure code's one of the most important things in my world, and it's an important thing to everybody. If you write the code and you deploy the code often, you can build anything. It's not impossible to be just a developer that's just learning the world, and who knows, in a couple of months, you could probably be building the next Netflix.